everyone. This is Kyle. That is Laura. This is He Said, She Said. Laura, good evening. Happy pre-Thanksgiving.
Thank you, and to you too. We're almost there at Thanksgiving.
I am going to eat my face off Thursday. We may not have a show on Monday because I may be in the hospital because I've eaten too much. I'm just going to prepare you for that right now.
It's a good holiday. Everybody should eat too much on Thanksgiving.
Yes. We're going to talk about number 3 in our 7 battles that every single parent must win. And this is one that I witnessed early on after I got divorced. And it's the battle with guilt. If you're a single parent, doesn't matter how you got that name, whether it was a one-night stand, whether you were divorced, whether you had a relationship that went sideways, you were never married. If you are a parent and you are a single parent, you are going to deal with feelings of guilt. When did you first start having feelings of guilt about being a single parent? Because I really think it affects parents more than it just does divorcees, because we do have the whole kid dynamic. When did you first start dealing with it, and how have you overcome it?
Listen, I think there was an element because we executed the divorce, the beginning stages. We made our decision as a couple, and then we made a plan for who to tell and when to tell and how to tell and all those kinds of things. And part of that in my head, not my heart yet, but my head, knew there was going to be feelings of guilt. I didn't feel it in my heart until really it was as soon as the second that we told the kids, when they completely crashed and burned.
They destroyed their world.
And they were young. They were 7 and 10. So they were young, but old enough to know what was going on. And I was crushed, and I knew that the decision I was making was going to be the right one, perhaps for me. But that the gut wrenching, looking into their eyes, and the knowledge that it was never going to be okay for them, and I was never going to ask them to be okay about it. But it was gut wrenching. And to this day, mind you, they're 15 and 18. They'll still say, you ruined my life because you got divorced.
So Laura, how did this guilt, all right, that really began when you told them mom and dad are getting divorced, and it kind of has carried on since then, how did that manifest in the way that you've parented, or you parented? Did these feelings of guilt that you dealt with, that, oh my God, I put my kids in this situation, I feel so awful, how did that manifest in the way that you related to them?
I have to pat myself on the back a tiny bit, and I don't mean this in the I'm so fabulous kind of way, but I was really nervous about parenting from the place that I wanted to parent from, and allowing the divorce and the guilt around the divorce to influence that. And so I really did a lot of reading. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of personal development work so that I could be strong enough as a parent to overcome my own guilt. And it was horribly brutal. There were so many days and nights and conversations and interactions with my kids where I was just the uber parent. I was right on. And then I would come up to my room and I would wail. I could start to cry now. Just the pain of it, and all I wanted to do is sweep them up into my arms and disregard the fact that they were rude and disrespectful because I knew they were upset. But I just made a commitment that divorce would not be an excuse for bad parenting.
You know, you made an interesting point a moment ago. You said I wanted to know where I was going to parent from, and where did that end up being for you?
Um, from my value system. It just I just dug deep to really, uncover my authentic value system, because when I was married there, we did have arguments about our, we did have some difference in our values, and I just decided that I would have to uncover those, and I was so confident in my own set of values that I wanted my parenting to come from a place of honoring those.
Right. You know, my own story, I didn't really suffer the guilt right away, primarily because I didn't feel the divorce was my fault. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't want it. I felt that I had done everything that I could do to reconcile. Add to that my children were 9 months and just under 2 years. So, they didn't get it. I mean, as long as they were fed and dry diapers, life was great. Fast forward several years, though, and now they're getting into 5 and 6 and 7 years old. And you could begin to sense, I wouldn't say confusion, but it was clearly dismay and a little bit of, this is a little odd, this whole situation. And kids talk, so they would come home and they would tell me things, and I would see, I would say, well, that's not the way we should be doing things. And I would realize that this is their life now, that they will never have the traditional childhood that their father had, that they will never be able to walk down the same stairs 2 years in a row on Christmas morning, that they will never be able to give their father breakfast in bed on his birthday. When I began to see how that was resonating with them, that's when the guilt set in for me. And I did everything possible, Laura, to medicate it. I did. I drank. I partied my face off. I got into relationships that were unhealthy for me because I thought that it would make a difference. And none of it works. Have you moved beyond it?
Yes.
Really?
Really.
How did you finally get beyond it? What'd you do?
I embraced that motherfucker.
You what?
I embraced it.
You embraced the guilt.
I embraced it, and I allowed it to become part of our conversation, my conversation with my kids. And I turned the guilt into, this isn't what I wanted either. Right? This isn't, the conversations I have with my kids is that while the divorce was the right thing for both of us, meaning my ex-husband and I know it wasn't the right thing or a good thing for you, but it was the right thing, and I'm confident in my choice and our decision.
Do you feel that as parents, and this is, getting to the point where your children can really understand some of the deeper nuances, do you apologize to them?
Never.
Never apologize to them?
No.
Why?
Not in that way. Not for getting divorced. Never an apology for getting divorced. I do apologize that what I did from the very beginning was give them permission to never accept it, never be okay with it. Mm-hmm. I said, you never ever have to be okay with it. And you can be upset with me at some level forever about it. You can be mad that you come from a divorced home. Embrace it. Don't let it, drive you, but you cannot be okay with this. And I am sorry that you have to go back and forth and that there are challenges, and I understand that. But never for getting divorced, because it was the right decision. and I don't want to. It's not comfortable for me for whatever reason to
How
apologize
did
for that.
they respond to that?
Um, you know, always less so now, but always when they were upset, whatever the upset was about, like I could have hurt my knee, but in the end, it's because you ruined my life. Like it went from I hurt my
Right,
knee to you ruined my life. It went to this homework is really hard to you ruined my life.
right,
Everything eventually, anytime there was upset, anger, sadness, it eventually came to how could you do this to me?
right.
And it's a really painful, hard thing to hear, but I I always tried to separate them. Let's, why don't we take a break from your homework and talk about the divorce? And then we'll go back to the homework because they're two separate issues.
Right.
I always tried to separate them. I always did you did that. We can always talk about the divorce. You can tell me everything you feel about it, but it's just never going to be an excuse for you failing an exam.
Right.
Like, don't come home and tell me you failed because I
Mom and
got
dad aren't
divorced. I
married
mean,
again.
and over the course of time, that's the pattern and that's the habit we developed and always talked about it. Because the one thing I have found, and your kids are a little bit younger than mine, is that every year, even though it's 8 years later, they're older and their cognitive abilities are different and their intellectual abilities are different. And so they're processing the divorce yet again in a new way. And so
Right.
every year it comes up yet again.
Well, I think it also, and maybe it's not like that where you live, but it may also help as they get more and more friends whose parents are also divorced. It gives a little bit more commonality. That was one of the real challenges for me because, even now, my two children are still in elementary school. I got one that'll be going into middle school next year. The divorced parents, that's a small minority where we live at that age. So imagine when my daughter was in kindergarten and my son was in preschool, right? I
Right.
felt
Right.
like a loser at every level. It was embarrassing. It was really I was mortified at times, and quite frankly, and I'm going to say this, there were times where I'm thinking to myself, it would be almost better if not. I'm just going to say this. This is going to sound cruel. It would be almost better if I was like a widow. I've moved farther beyond it now. I don't have the luxury, and I do think it's a luxury to be able to have those really more intellectual conversations about it, to be able to sit down with your son or your daughter and really talk about the fact, to your point, listen, I get it. This is the last, when I held you that first hour that you were born, this is the last thing in the world that I wanted to happen. Unfortunately, it's happened. I'm sorry that this is the childhood that you were given, but I want to be able to have those conversations with my children. On the flip side of that, that's all they've ever known.
Right.
They
That's
don't know
right.
what the other one's like. They have no clue. So from that standpoint, I do have a little bit of a benefit.
Well, yeah, because there's not, you don't have they feel less than because they don't feel less than because they don't have anything
That's
to feel less than.
that's right. They don't know
Um,
what they don't know what the
there
better
are
than
moments that
is.
happen all the time. I do have this kind of, and when you ask me, have I moved past it? Yes, I've moved past it. But there are moments that happen. Zachary, my oldest, is 18. When he was 16 and he got his license, he got his permit, I should say, his driver's permit. His father and I were in the mid. We had a parenting disagreement about his getting his driver's permit.
Hmm.
I didn't want him to get it when he got it. His father took him and got it with him
Right.
without my permission, approval, participation. And I had to stand firmly in expressing to my son why it was that I was taking the stand that I took. And he was, this was supposed to be one of the best days of my life,
Oh, the drama.
this was, I was so happy and you took away all my happiness. And I was like, damn. And I knew I was 100% right. Of course I was right. I was 100% right in this one. And he knew it too. And so I knew that I did the right parenting thing. But I got to tell you, that was one of those nights where I came upstairs, shut my door, and again was just like, I can never get this day back with him, the day of getting it. And that's what was so upsetting for me.
Right. So, final thoughts. Let me ask you this, Laura. If you had, if people out there, they're dealing with it, if they're single parents, there's no question. If you had to give them just one piece of advice from your own story, from your own experiences on how to kind of grapple and win this battle over guilt, what would you tell them?
When it comes to parenting, parent from the place of your values, really to parent from, be the parent you want to be, and do not let your feelings of guilt drive your parenting decisions, because your children are going to remember the way that you parented them. They're gonna recognize it. They're gonna know when you're parenting from your place of confidence and your values, and when you're parenting them from your place of guilt. They know it. They know. They always know. So I mean, that's my biggest parenting piece of advice
I
about
would
guilt.
say this, and I say this because it's helped me the most, and it's something that I rely upon even now. That I have to take a look at my children's life and the divorce that they now and this the divorce that their parents had as an opportunity. It gives
Mm-hmm.
me an opportunity to do things and be for them someone that almost certainly I would not have been able to be if I was still married to their mom. I have
Absolutely.
to embrace those opportunities and take advantage of them. And when I see that I've had an impact on my kids and it is a byproduct of the fact that I am in this new life that's absent their mom, that's a win for me.
Absolutely.
And I think that for that, that is the one piece of advice that I would give all of them. Look at your circumstances, look at the opportunities this provided for you, and then embrace that. Embrace those opportunities. And I think that one thing alone, that change in behavior and attitude will do more to help remove the guilt, at least from my perspective, than anything else.
Absolutely. That's amazingly good advice. And I'll just throw in, I agree with you. I've been able to be more of the woman and person and parent that I'm meant to be because of my divorce.
Laura, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Kyle, happy Thanksgiving. And to all of you out there, happy Thanksgiving.
Ditto. Take care. Bye.